Meanwhile, the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, says it is alarmed both by how former Eskom CEO Andrew de Ruyter instituted the investigation in league with big businesses and the specific person appointed to conduct the investigation behind sabotage at Eskom. De Ruyter appeared before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts to give detail about the corruption at Eskom. This follows an explosive interview with eNCA in February. He revealed in his interview that at least 1 billion rand is stolen from Eskom every month. According to him, his attempt to stop the scourge could be behind last year's attempt on his life. De Ruyter has refused to divulge the identities of some sources, but said the hawks are aware of who they are and does not want to compromise the investigations as they are at sensitive stages, specifically around organised crime. Joining us to speak on this latest development is Trevor Shako, National Spokesperson, SAFTU. He joins us from Gauteng, South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on News Central Now.
Thank you, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. So tell us, why is your union condemning evidence by former Eskom CEO Andrew de Ruyter?
We are condemning the manner in which the evidence was brought about or arrived at. Firstly, the institution of the intelligence grouping that was instituted to go and investigate. But secondly, the information which was not even tested after these people would have finished and filed the report and handed it to Andre de Ruyter. So the institution of that would have been, of course, in cahoots with big business, which provided money for Andre de Ruyter to conduct that off-record investigation. And what the company they've appointed is run by a former policeman, but in his employ, there is a person who is a former apartheid spy who is responsible for the killing of about 20 activists during the 1980s. And for us, we do not think that in South Africa, in a democratic dispensation, and with Eskom as a public entity, that it is right for a person, a CEO or whoever, to appoint an investigation that will be led by a former apartheid spy who somehow was boasting about killing activists who brought about the liberation and democracy we're enjoying at the current moment. So we are condemning the fact that de Ruyter went about this investigation in this manner. And we are also condemning the fact that there was a lot of fear-mongering which was being perpetuated by these very people who were instituted to lead this investigation of Russia being involved in the sabotage of Eskom, which is our electricity utility, public electricity utility, which provides electricity to our people. So because of this, we are, and of course, they've come out also to say that those allegations or those findings were not substantiated, and as a result cannot hold before any court, and there are no facts really around it.
Okay, now still talking about this evidences which you have mentioned, we understand that de Ruyter refused to divulge the identities of some sources he says are sabotaging Eskom, including high-rank ministers. Is that evidence enough to say there is corruption at Eskom? And what can you tell us about this this so-called evidence that de Ruyter claims that he has?
We think there is evidence, but that evidence is not the one which is established by this particular investigation, which was conducted by FIVAS. What we know is that people would have, through various reports, people would have, through various whistleblowing, come out to expose corruption at Eskom. Not just corruption that is recent, but corruption dating back to 2010. For instance, when 1 billion was awarded to South Africa to build the new 2 power stations for Eskom, Medupi and Kusile, which currently are not even functioning properly, we know that they had contracted a company, a Japanese company called Hitachi, and Hitachi Africa would have had ANC's investment wing, which is Chancellor House, owning a stake of Hitachi Africa. And out of that, Chancellor House, the investment wing of the ANC, was able to gain about 90 million in success fees And these fees were not justified and were not even supposed to be paid to that company. So it just made money out of doing nothing. So this is part of the corruption that exists at Eskom. And there are other reports which have actually shown that there is indeed theft of coal, exchanging of coal, low-grade coal for higher-grade coal, and all of that. But also that there are people sabotaging and stealing Eskom cables in the transmission division of Eskom. So indeed, there is corruption, but we do not agree with the report that has been revealed by this shady investigation conducted by covert intelligence operation.
Okay, now, Trevor, still looking at all of this, I mean, we have on one end, the former Eskom CEO says he does not want to divulge those implicated. And then on the other hand, we're seeing a high level of corruption going on in Eskom. And back in South Africa, it's bringing on ending power courts. What does your association want, and what do you think is the right way to go about this situation?
There are two things. The first one is that indeed those who are currently involved in corruption at Eskom must be investigated, arrested, and sent to prison to longer sentences. That's the first one. But the second one is that Eskom is in those problems where you have competing private interests, because ANC has taken a solution and a resolution to unbundle Eskom and privatize it. So this has invited a series of differing private interests which are currently colliding, which are currently competing for the interests at Eskom and causing the problems that we see there. So SAFTU has consistently said that we should stop unbundling of Eskom and stop the privatization of energy provision in this country, because that is not going to serve the collective interests of the wider population of our society. But secondly, we have said that in the just transition, Eskom has to invest in renewable energy sources to evade, of course, the imminent climate catastrophe caused by the use of fossil fuel intensive economy. And because of that, we think that this renewable energy sources should be championed by Eskom, rather than having Eskom to be unbundled and having to procure this energy, renewable energy, from independent power producers, which is currently what is unfolding in the country.
All right, there's a lot of things that needs to be done, especially looking at the corruption going on at Eskom. Thank you so much for sharing so much insight on this conversation. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you very much.